Have you seen Bruce Richard Reynolds? He's a man we'd like to find. They say the great train robbery, he was the mastermind.
Nick, will you welcome now, Bruce? Yeah.
Is it on?
Okay.
It's on.
We've got reception.
Right.
Why do you think the great train robbery has stayed in the public perception, whatever? Why do you think it's stayed there for so long? It's 36 years, it's never gone away. It's as strong now probably as it was then.
Well, it was 1963, and 1963 was really the advent of media across the whole of the country. People have got television sets where they hadn't had them before. I rather looked on the Great Train Robbery as being the first media-covered robbery that there had been, much the same as the Vietnam War had been the first Vietnam War that had ever been shown on the media. So basically it was like a serial that was run on for months and months. People was following the whole events. Not without a degree of avarice, perhaps. There was a reward of £250,000 which had been put out, and of course, with that sort of money at stake, there was plenty of people that was willing to claim it.
How much of the reward was claimed?
Approximately £150,000.
Right. You said about your past life, it wasn't just about money, it was about expressing yourself. Can you explain that a little?
Well, I think Freddie Foreman touched on it really in a way, in so much as we were all uprooted during the war. And of course the main theme, the main thrust of the press, the media at the time, was that there was a war going on and the war needed future cannon fodder. And virtually everyone was imbued with the whole idea of being a hero in those particular terms. So it was a great sense of adventure for me to be involved in any sort of crime. It really became, where I was concerned, not an absolute war on society, but a war on authority. Authority always seemed to me to be not even-handed in its dealings. I found that most of the time that I was on the wrong end of it, always. And so it was really a great game to me initially. And of course when I got to Borstal, I just really saw myself in the light of being in Borstal that it was just a prisoner of war camp. It was something to escape from, which I duly did.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah.
Several times.
Do you miss the old life? Let me just say, I mean, you were in the first division of crime, the top of the first division, but not just by the Great Train Robbery. Before that, there were other things as well.
Yeah.
And for a lot of years, you were up there in the front of it all, and you had a real lifestyle, particularly for those days. Do you miss that?
Very, very much so. You can't, but I was a young man then. I mean, I had expensive taste. I mean, basically, the rules in my life was governed by the 3 C's, which was cars and crumpet and crime. Not necessarily in that order, just depending what was more demanding at the time.
You wrote the book yourself?
Yes.
Which is fairly unusual. You didn't have any help from...
Well, I had a very good editor who put it into sort of form for me. It actually runs to something like 850 words.
Words? Pages?
Yeah, pages. Words, pages. What's in the name? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You're a well-read guy. I mean, I know that. It's obvious from other stuff that you've written. How long have you wanted to write a book?
I always wanted to write from a very early age. Being very much a solitary child, I got introduced to Hemingway at 14 years of age. And from Hemingway I got introduced to Steinbeck, and then I got introduced by Hemingway going to Dostoevsky and all the greats. Obviously I thought one of these days I'll write a book, and it was to that end which my boyhood ambition was to go into the Royal Navy. Found I had bad eyes, so subsequently I decided I was going to be a correspondent for a newspaper, a foreign correspondent naturally, where I could travel. That's what Hemingway had done. When I couldn't do that, basically I still wanted to lead the life of Hemingway.
Why did he call it Autobiography of a Thief? I mean, it's not exactly the snappiest title for a man who would organise the crime of the century.
Well, publishers obviously have some sort of say in the title. There have been various titles put forward. Desperado had been one of them. Rather bland titles like Crossing the Line. My particular thing was I thought that the uncompromising honesty of Genet had appealed to me vastly, and I thought it was my little way of paying tribute to Jean Genet.
Right. So why did you change so many names in the book? I ask you that because I know that other people, some of your contemporaries who've written books, have said, people have said to them, why aren't I in it? Yet you've changed a lot of names, you know?
Well, at the time I wrote, which was really before what you might see as the emergence of so many criminal books, basically there were certain people in it, friends of mine that I didn't think wanted to be named. Obviously Freddie Foreman, who I've known since I was a boy, who has got more respect than various other people connected with the criminal business. I didn't think that they would want to be named at that particular time, and it wasn't my intention in any way to upset people's lives. There are people that want anonymity today, that they don't want to be mentioned that they've got a criminal past.
You wrote, I'm going to ask you one more question that nobody took, because I'm aware that people have loosened up a bit and are likely to probably want to ask questions themselves. You wrote, it was all part of making out that I was someone. Being a successful thief, you can be almost any person you want, for as long as the money lasts. But the money for you ran out a long time ago, and how are you now?
That's a good question, Jim.
That's what I thought I'd save it till last.
Yeah.
I'm going now.
Where I am today, and I still find it in my life very, very exciting, in so much as I still find I'm treading the tightrope that I was doing when I was a criminal, in so much as by writing you're exposing yourself completely to obviously the naked eyes of various readers, and they might say, well, he might have been a good thief, but he's not much of a writer. So that's basically the sort of thing that I look on as being exciting.
I don't think people have said that to you, though.
Well, maybe they have, maybe they haven't. Maybe that's their secret thought, Julian. I don't know.
You're thinking that they might be thinking that. Well, let's ask them. Who wants to ask Bruce a question?
But I wondered whether you could possibly tell me whether you feel these days crime as it is written purely for the prurient sense, purely because the tabloids want to glorify, or people want to get themselves off on crime, people who actually would like to be criminals but can't be criminals because they don't have the bottom to be criminals, or whether you think that crime should be recorded as an aesthetic, as a literary adventure, like Genet.
Well, I think it largely depends on the personality of the person who's writing it. I mean, some people are involved in crime for just the end result. I've met quite a few people that really it's just a way of life. I mean, it's the same madness that perhaps I could venture is maybe it's something to do with genetics.
For instance, Genet believed in something that he called necessary vagabondage, which for those people who don't know what necessary vagabondage is, the criminal gene is the current term which is popular in the press. Do you believe in the criminal gene? Do you believe it is necessary? Do you believe we were born as criminals?
No, certainly not. But I certainly feel that there's some people that perhaps it's a genetic trace within them that they need this form of adrenaline-induced rush. I can't explain why some people are criminals, well, I can't explain why some people are mountain climbers. I mean, it's just the most craziest thing. Anyone that really wants to be a first-class criminal has to accept the fact that he's going to spend a lot of time in prison somewhere along the line. It's a tough life. It's a tough life being a mountaineer. I mean, you've got to be partly crazy, or certainly you've got to be young.
Can I just ask one final thing? Do you believe, like an actor, a thief can be considered to be the same as an actor, whereas an actor, when he goes on stage, steals the audience's imagination, whereas we criminals steal the audience's back pockets or
I've often thought that being a criminal, it gives you the advantage that you write your own scenario.
Yes.
You're your own director, and of course you have the plum part of all, you are the star.
Thank
You've been like Bonnie Briggs and being the one who got away and stayed away.
Yes. Do I? Backroom.
Do you wish you'd been?
Being like Bonnie Briggs and got away and stayed away.
No, I don't want to be anybody else but Bruce Reynolds.
It seems to me that people have been saying the nature of crime has changed and that perhaps it's drugs now or something like that. Who are the criminals of today in your mind? Who gets away with it?
Well, the ones that get away with it are the people like the Right Honourable Mr. Aiken and the Guinnesses of this world that are obviously too ill to appear in court. I mean, it's very, very much heavily loaded, and this, I think, reflects what I was saying earlier on about authority being, if you like, loaded against the ordinary working person. But of course, talking about crime today and what is crime, you have to really go into the whole nature of what is crime. I mean, the mere fact that in the media it seems to be that what most people are worried about is street crime, is muggings and things like that, whereas of course my type of crime, the same as Fred's and to a degree also with Roy's, it's gone. I mean, it doesn't exist any longer. I mean, security is with CCTV cameras. The whole world has radically changed as regards the type of crime that I committed years ago.
Right, we've got a question from a man who's hidden behind the cameraman.
No, I just wondered, like, in terms of the idea that you, it started to do with rebels, really. At that time, before the war, then you have people remembering the last 5 years of war as kids and stuff. I wonder how much you feel connected. The train robbery was the biggest crime at that time. It's not a million miles away from the Beatles at that time as well. How, like, close to that line between John Lennon going off and Paul McCartney going off and doing music, and their kind of sense of rebel, and your sense of rebel?
Well, I think that there's a certain kinship there. I mean, I suppose I thought of myself as being an outlaw rather than a bandit. I mean, it's only a question of really semantics, what you call yourself. I could have even said, as Piers Paul Reed did in his book The Train Robbers, that we were still Anglo-Saxons fighting the Normans.
How much do you feel the media coverage that is used after the robbery helps you to capture?
Well, the media obviously played a major part. I mean, it's the media that basically we were a highly organised team of professional thieves. Obviously, none of us ever projected ourselves as the great train robbers, but of course the media got on it. It was a nice little connection with the first film that had been made, the Great Train Robbery in America, so they latched on to the title The Great Train Robbery, and of course from that became all the rest of the media hype which followed. And of course I had a brilliant cast to work with. I mean, it was quite a mixed cast. I mean, you had people which really could have come out of a Hollywood film. You had Roy Jones, who was a very, very promising racing driver. You had various other, what I might call, people that weren't of the norm. They were all brought together, they all had individual talents, and they certainly didn't fit the normal picture of what you might think is a criminal, i.e. Bill Sykes with a striped vest and a mask and a bag with swag on his back. So, that's it.
Do you ever read novels, crime novels written by non-criminals, i.e. fiction, and do you find that they're just not real enough?
I do read fictional crime stuff. Mainly American seems to be much more realistic, but I think that with the new type of writing which is evolving, the Britpulp which is evolving, I mean, Jake Arnott's just got a book out, The Long Firm, which is very, very good. And there's some very good stuff coming out. Nick Blinko's done some very good stuff that's really quite accurate. I fully believe that it's very, very difficult to people to write about something which they don't really know. They maybe can write, they assimilate certain parts of, let's say, people's conversations, but they don't really know what it's like. So even with books which I found with Roy Shaw's book, which I think is a great book, but nevertheless, what I like is when Roy is speaking, not when Kate Cray is speaking. That, I think, is the genesis of his book.
You're first.
Bruce, I read an article recently which said that they got the right people, but there's a lot of fitting up went on as well. Is there any truth in that?
Well, that's a very good question. Let me put it this way. It was a crime against... what various people have said was the Royal Mail, the Queen herself as being patron of the Royal Mail. It was an offence that couldn't be allowed to go away. And of course that I understand that now, I understood it at the time, considering we were looking at the Bank of England as our next target. So the authorities realised that they had to have a result here, which is why they promoted Chief Superintendent Thomas Butler to head of the flying squad, and virtually said to him, you have to do whatever you ever have to do, but these people have got to be caught. And with that in mind, that he made sure we were caught. It's as simple as that. I mean, I know very well, and it really beggars the imagination to think that you've got 16 professional criminals that are on the biggest robbery of their life are going to leave their fingerprints behind, which is something which the various amateur will do. So you have to draw your own conclusions there. Certainly, it always comes up. The fact that the driver, Mills, was hit on the head and he died 7 years later from leukemia. Somehow that's been levelled at us, but what's never levelled at us and is never levelled at the authorities is that there was a totally innocent person involved in the train robbery that had no part in it whatsoever, who died in prison as a result of getting a sentence for it. Now, it's all very well, the police, all the authorities, everybody involved knew he was innocent. But they're the casualties. I mean, as Fred has remarked, and I suppose I will remark, and our friend up there said about there's nothing really romantic about prison. I mean, it's great when the going's good and you're driving the Aston DB6 around, dressed in suits and Savile Row, but when your head hits the pillow and you're facing 25 years in prison, it's not so glamorous then.
Regarding the innocent man in prison, do you not feel some responsibility for that?
I don't personally feel any responsibility for that because he was a friend of a friend that just got involved with his friend just as a friend. I can obviously feel some responsibility for Mills being hit on the head because I was in charge of the operation, and so therefore the responsibility is mine. I've done all I can do in that respect. I would apologise to the family for what good it is. I I can't do any more. It's an accident, it happened, and there you go. And we've got our sentence for it. Sentences total over 300 years for the people that was involved in it.
I was always searching for El Dorado.